Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
From the Fifth Quarter Studio in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to the Coaching Youth Hoops Podcast.
They're playing
Basketball. Here's our hosts, Steve Collins. And Bill Flitter.
Hey, Coach. Welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. I am your host today, Coach Bill Flitter. Looking forward to another great episode today. I really like this subject matter, which is it's talking about how to optimize and make our practices better. But before we get started, today's podcast is brought to you by the basketballplaycreator.com. If you're looking for a easy way to create plays for your at your next practice, head on over there. You can animate the plays, you can print them out, you can bring them with you, you can create playbooks that you can share with your team. All right, great little tool and affordable. All right, we're going to talk today about the how you end practices matters. And it actually has a bigger impact on how your players perceive how the entire practice went. So, for example, if you're doing let's say a 90-minute practice and it was the 85 or 80 minutes of it was amazing. You guys were having fun. And the last 10 minutes, things weren't just they weren't clicking. It wasn't happening like you liked it. Players were getting frustrated. They will walk away so for example, somebody asks them, how was your practice today? They'll say it was lousy, right? And again, I'm being a little bit generic here, but the last bit of, they'll remember how practice was by the last few minutes of practice. You had 80 minutes of a great practice, 10 minutes of a lousy practice, but it would just happen to be at the end. That is how your players will perceive how the entire practice went. So it's called the peak end rule. And this is a cognitive bias that affects how people remember past experiences. And it states this, that people judge an experience based on how they felt at its peak. So maybe somewhere in the middle, right? Or not necessarily the middle, but something that was very thrilling in practice. And that might be different for everybody. And then at its end and how they felt at the end, rather, as I said, than the entire cumulative moment that they experienced for that full 90-minute practice. So again, it's regardless if it was good or bad. And you could flip the switch. You could have 80 minutes of a bad practice and the last 10 minutes went really well. The kids enjoyed themselves, and that's how they'll perceive practice. So as coaches, how can we play to this peak end rule, right? Again, this is psychology type of stuff. So how can we apply this to practice? And I think there's pretty simple ways we can apply this. And again, it doesn't take too much effort. One is, Well, first off, let's talk about the peak. The peak is harder to adjust, right? And again, the peak could be different for everyone on your team, and they're, one person's peak is another person's valley, right? But what I think we can control is the end. How do we end practice? So a couple of things. Number one is play fun, skill-based game and let players choose what you do at the end. Of course, what do players always want to do? They want to scrimmage, or they want to play knockout, or whatever it is. Okay, well, end practice with a scrimmage, end practice with a fun game that players are really going to enjoy, and mix that up a little bit. Then the other thing that's part of this is, and I always do this, is we celebrate at the end of practice. We have peer-to-peer celebrations. So you've heard me talk about in this podcast about my red dot, right? So what I have players do is I'll pick a player who will recognize a peer and physically give them a red dot. And their acknowledgement of that peer, right, is a gift, right? We always, the person feels good about receiving and giving that gift, and they leave on a high note, right? But just real quickly, the red dot. So the red dot brings our core beliefs to life through a physical red dot. And you'll see our players, they'll accumulate these red dots on their water bottles, and it's kind of a sense of, look at all the red dots I got, right? Sense of pride for them. So come up with a way for your players to recognize one another, and you as well. Hey, Sally had a great practice. Addison, you did this really well. Rainey, I really enjoyed the way you were helping your teammates out today. But have the players recognize other players, and we usually do 3. So 3 people, and how it works is this. I'll pick a person, that person gives out the first red dot. The first red dot recipient gives out a second one, gives out a second red dot, and the last person gives out one as well. So we give out 3 red dots, but whoever gets picked is the person who gives out the next red dot. So again, remember that if you want kids to really enjoy practice, and you want them to enjoy you as a coach, consider the peak end rule. You can control how you end practice. End it in a fun way, and fun. Define fun. Like I said, give players a choice of what they can do. Give them 3 types of things they can do and have them pick it. They always want to scrimmage, so maybe just end with a good scrimmage, and then huddle everybody up and do some peer-to-peer recognition. Okay, and see how your practices change and how the attitudes of the players change, and are they leaving on a high note? All right, Coach. Thank you again for listening. I hope that little tip was helpful. Again, keep the end in mind, and do what you can to end practice on that high note. Have a great season. Thank you for doing what you do with the kids. Check us out at Coaching Youth Hoops. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Of course, go to coachingyouthhoops.com, to our website. If you need practice plan, check out my blitz attack offense as well. I've been using it. Love it. You can go to youthmotionoffense.com to find that. All right, Coach, till next time, have an amazing season. We'll catch you soon. Thank you.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.